Welcome back. I'm using a Socratic technique with my students regarding the legal ID in broadcasting. We've gone over the first requirement of the ID, the call letters, rather thoroughly. Now I've just laid a big Socratic trap for my students about the second thing required for the legal ID, asking them, so how do we determine the city of license? Is it where the studios are, what city its corporate offices are in, where the transmitter's located? The reason it's a trap is because none of the responses I've presented is the correct answer. Let's see how this pans out. Any ideas? Is it possible the legal ID requires a city for each of those things, the corporate headquarters and such? Something like KDBM, Riverside, Chino, Los Angeles? Nobody? They are either flummoxed by the question or they are on to my little trap. Maybe the actual term will give us a clue. City of license. What do you think that means?
The city the FCC says the station operates in?
Okay, where would we find this information?
The FCC would have it. You could check their website.
Of course you could. Maybe there's an easier way. Let's explore how other licenses work. Do any of you have a license? Prove it. Oh, so the issuing agency gave you a piece of paper proving you have a license to do something. So,
check the station's license.
Obviously, the license is required to be posted at the main control point of the transmitter. For radio stations, this is usually in the studio or an engineering room near it. The call letters are also listed on the license. This is why we describe the legal ID as being the call letters and city of
license.
Of course.
This is one of those great moments in teaching where you can actually see the light bulbs going off over each student's head. When do we air this legal ID?
At the top of every hour.
At the exact top of every hour? Like 3 o'clock, 0 minutes, 0 seconds? What happens if a radio station is playing a song at that time?
Well, I guess they'll just have to turn that filthy racket off and air the legal ID.
Interesting. Tell me, how often do you hear that when listening to the radio? This is actually a very important part of the Socratic discussion. I'm relating the subject matter to their own experience. That is, music radio stations would rarely stop a song midway through it just to air legal ID, even if it is an FCC requirement. Students now have to think about how stations can get away with not airing the legal ID at the exact top of the hour.
The radio station I listen to always airs its legal ID within a few seconds of the top of the hour.
Let me guess. Is this a talk station, which carries a program aired by many other stations? Or does this station have a network newscast at the top of the hour?
Yeah.
A station carrying or producing a show airing on other stations simultaneously will usually end a program segment before the top of the hour in a pre-formatted way, so stations can air their respective legal IDs. Local stations taking a network newscast, which airs at the top of the hour, need to air their legal IDs before the news feed comes down the network. For talk radio, there are simple, effective techniques to ensure this can be done. It's called backtiming. You can also do this in a music format, but it's much harder. Also, program directors of music stations must play songs popular with their audience, not ones which run a particular length. You may find this hard to believe, but the FCC recognizes they should not interfere with programming unless laws are being broken or there are complaints from listeners in the station's service area. So the FCC does not require the legal ID to be aired exactly at the top of the hour. Instead, they indicate the legal ID should air at the first normal break in programming at the top of the hour. Notice how open this definition is. So where would you air the legal ID in this case?
At 58 minutes.
Good. 58 is only 2 minutes before the top of the hour. The other option is 3 minutes after the top of the hour. So the first normal break in music closest to the top of the hour is 58. How about this one?
4 minutes after the hour.
Yeah, you seem to get it. For TV stations, things are just a little bit easier as most shows are pre-produced to specific time lengths. This was not developed to meet FCC regulations. It's just how that business evolved. I have one more thing that's bothering me about the legal ID. Explain this one to me. I've actually heard this legal ID on air. Feel free to take a picture of it now. Then email me your thoughts. Where is the actual legal ID in all of this? What is all the other stuff? The 3 most useful responses will receive one of the rewards we established on the first day of class. Until we meet again, be sure to air those legal IDs properly. Otherwise, I'll be chatting with you at the mall as you work your way up to barista. Take care. So let's look at what I was trying to do with the Socratic technique. First, test for content knowledge. For instance, what the function of the FCC is. Think about content knowledge. We covered call letters and city of license several times, in fact. The deeper they think about it, the more they think about it, the better they'll remember it. Add to content knowledge, like backtiming and how radio station KDKA contradicts the K and W call letter convention used by the FCC. Assess the depth of understanding, such as when to air a legal ID. Exercise their logic and attention to detail. The FCC, for example, does not issue call letters for stations in Canada and Mexico. Prep for the next class. I actually gave them 2 homework opportunities and make them justify answers, examples from their learning material or their own experiences. This part is the most basic element of the Socratic technique. One final point. Let's revisit our first student's response to what a legal ID was.
A thing we do when the big hand hits 12.
If I were to ask again after this Socratic session, the answer might be,
It's these letters and cities the FCC makes us say over the air near the top of the hour so people know which station it is. If I don't do it, I totally get fired and go work at a coffee shop.
Though this answer also has much to be desired, the student is still demonstrating a better understanding of the concept than was evidenced at the start of class. This additional insight was gained by simply following the discussion fellow classmates were having. Though student participation is far better for learning, a properly executed Socratic session will benefit both the exceptional student who is participating and the less active student who might need a little extra support.
How rude!